Music has never been much of a big thing in my life. I've never been in a choir, never been in a band, never learned an instrument to any degree, and I've never learned to sing. I don't dislike music, and I have immense respect for anyone who can sing or play well. It's just nothing I've ever really put myself to. Now, I've tried at various times to culture myself. While we lived in Regina, Lisa and I went to the ballet to see the Nutcracker Suite. Yes. Put on by the Royal Winnipeg Ballet Group, a world-class show put on by world-class dancers and a world-class symphony hosted in a world-class facility. And you know what I did halfway through watching the ballet? Yeah, how'd you know? I was nodding off during it. So ballet, tried that, wasn't for me. Lisa's dad, he loved and listened to bluegrass country gospel. Yeah, I suspected that was this was that kind of crowd. Yeah, he used to watch Tommy Hunter show every Sunday afternoon. Yeah, he liked Hank Snow and Hank Williams, mixed in a little bit of Johnny Cash too. Lisa's dad would go on these hour-long walks around the neighborhood, plug in his headphones to his iPod, and walk around listening to his favorite bluegrass country gospel music. So I tried that too. Listened to a few CDs. Well, not the whole thing. Couldn't get into it. I have friends whose collections of vinyl records number into the thousands. Do you know any people like this? My one friend, he has a room in his house dedicated to his collection of vinyl records. It's full, top to bottom, left to right, full. Do you know that medium is making a comeback? Do you know it's a thing these days? Enthusiasts are collecting these vinyl records. Right now, you can go to Best Buy and spend $600 on sale for a brand new vinyl turntable. Yeah. Whole mortgage payment for a record player. Never mind the cost of the vinyl collection. That's how deep some people are into their music. Me, in my whole teen years through the 80s, I bought exactly one audio tape. A few years later, I splurged and also got a CD. That's how much I'm into collecting music. Now, even though I didn't own my own music collection or play an instrument or have the radio on in the background while doing homework, I had friends that did that. They have music on while doing their homework. I couldn't do that. I need silence. But even though I didn't pursue music, it still wormed its way into me. The bus driver would let the kids play a ghetto blaster on our 30-minute ride from Keswick to Sutton to go to high school. So I heard lots of music that way. Or maybe I was at a friend's house and he was listening to a new CD. Or maybe another friend was practicing his guitar with the latest songs. School events in the school cafeteria always had lots of music. And when I was riding in the tractor on a hot summer day, I might have had the radio on in the background while baling hay. And so even without me looking for it, all the top songs of all the different genres of music, all of them, whether pop or rock or heavy metal or even a tiny bit of country, it's all wormed its way into my personhood. And now I find an odd phenomenon at work. I love listening to that music, not because of the music, but because it takes me back to some fond memories. The music is, in fact, nostalgia for me. I hear a song and I'll remember back to those years when Lisa and I were dating. In some years, or in some ways, I look at that as the best years of my life. I'll hear another song and remember an event from high school very fondly. I'll hear another song and vividly recall some good times with a specific old friend. The music brings back memories, and so I've learned to love the music. Does that make sense to you? And so last year, here's what happened. Our family made this big transition. moved across the country from Saskatchewan to this new town that would be our home, Peterborough. And so we were looking for things to do. Things to do in Peterborough that would help us get to know the city and the community. And we heard very quickly about this phenomenon known as Music Fest. A series of free concerts. Free concerts. Free, downtown, outside, in a park. You sit on the grass. There's no seats. The more I heard about it, the more I began to realize just why it's free. Because sometimes a thing is exactly worth every penny you pay for. And my assumption led me to think, if the concerts are free, so I'm going here, yeah, then I thought the artists must be a bunch of no-names, right? But then, Lisa and I looked down the schedule of artists, and they had some big names. Correction, some huge names. They had Gowan. Yeah. Blank stares at Daniel. Gowan was here. They had the Box from Montreal. Lead singer was also in Men Without Hats. A lot of blank stares here this morning. Platinum Blonde was here. All right. All three of those bands were pretty big in the 80s. But I'm self-aware enough to realize that my taste in music is rather obscure. Popular 1980s Canadian bands is a pretty short list. But I was excited at the list, and so we went to each of those concerts. We really enjoyed the music last year. Those concerts were great fun, and the music took me back. And so in preparation for this summer series of concerts, I followed Music Fest on Facebook. I followed them so that I would see the lineup of musicians as soon as they announced it. They announced the confirmation of the first artist all the way back in November, like a full 7 months ago. And when they did, oh man, I wrote it on my calendar right away. For Canada Day 2017, the first concert of this year's Peterborough Music Fest that will happen this coming Saturday, July 1st, is Kim Mitchell. Yes. Still blank stares. In truth, I only know 2 Kim Mitchell songs. Patio Lanterns and Might As Well Go for Soda. Still, this artist, again, was huge when I was in high school, and those songs bring me back to some great nostalgia. In my enthusiasm, I've told others. I said, hey, can't wait to go to the Kim Mitchell concert on Canada Day. Is that something you're going to? The typical response is, I don't know who that is. One said, Kim Mitchell, I can't say I know the music. Who is she? Now, the joke there is not that Kim Mitchell is unknown to some people as an artist, but that Kim Mitchell was so unknown by this person that they assumed he was a she. Kim Mitchell's a dude. But I'm glad to see that on Canada Day, our town is going big and celebrating well. Kim Mitchell big. I think our country, with all its faults and foibles, is yet a good one, and we are blessed. And we should celebrate with gratitude for who we are and what we have been given. And when I think of our Christian response to the country we live in, whether it is Canada or Christians who live in Ecuador or Mexico or the United States or any other part of the world, I think our relationship with our country and with our government is fleshed out in Romans chapter 13. And I'm going to reread that passage that Tom read for us in Romans 13, verses 1 to 7, because I think it's a vital piece of Scripture. Here's what he says. He says, "Let every person be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God. and those that exist have been instituted by God. I'm going to read that sentence actually again. There is no authority except from God, and those that exist have been instituted by God. Therefore, whoever resists the authorities resists what God has appointed, and those who resist will incur judgment. For rulers are not a terror to good conduct, but to bad. Would you have no fear of the one who is in authority? Then do what's good, and you will receive his approval, for he is God's servant for your good. But if you do wrong, be afraid. For he does not bear the sword in vain, for he is the servant of God, an avenger who carries out God's wrath on the wrongdoer. Therefore, one must be in subjection, not only to avoid God's wrath, but also for the sake of conscience. For the same reason, you also pay taxes, for the authorities are ministers of God, attending to this very thing. Pay to all what is owed them. Taxes to whom taxes are owed, revenue to whom revenue is owed, respect to whom respect is owed, honor to whom honor is owed. The Apostle Paul has quite an elevated view of our world's civil servants. They are instituted by God, and they are worthy of our submission, he says. Yeah, well, in a perfect world, maybe yes, Paul, but we live in a world with some rather divisive figures, world leaders who some Christians might label as not God's first choice. We have a president in the U.S. some Christians think is on the right track, and others believe he is anything but God's choice. At home here, we have a Prime Minister Trudeau and a Premier Wynne, where some Christians have looked at them and their policies and concluded that God would never want someone like that in power. Or look at other parts of the world where in Gambia, Africa, the president of 22 years, when he lost the election, decided not to give up power. Actions like that will tear a whole country apart. Our modern world is riddled with examples of dictators, corrupt leaders, bad leaders, or even elected officials we happen to disagree with. But we disagree enough that we might be tempted to think the Apostle Paul here doesn't know what he's talking about. If he knew the modern world, he would never have said that God instituted that person and that government. Yet Paul does indeed understand the complexity of God's will in a broken world of broken systems. Perhaps you have forgotten, or maybe you did not even know in the first place, the political landscape of the Apostle Paul's day. The leader in that part of the world at that time in history was called the Roman Emperor. Having more power than the title of king, people worshipped the emperor. They were forced to worship the emperor. If they did not burn incense and say prayers to the Roman emperor, then they would at least lose their citizenship, perhaps be jailed also for insubordination. And in Paul's day, the emperor was Nero. Nero was his name. Nero had a reputation as a particularly cruel emperor. Comes by it honestly, his mom was like that. Agrippina was his mom. Very ambitious lady. She wanted power in her family. She wanted power to go to her son, little Nero. So when the current emperor's wife died, a few things happened in suspiciously rapid succession. Agrippina went ahead and married the emperor. Agrippina had the emperor officially adopt her son into the line of succession. Then the emperor died suddenly, leaving Agrippina's son Nero as the new emperor, just like that. There was never proof, but history has always been suspicious that she somehow killed her husband, the emperor, so that her son could rise in his place. As you might imagine, a woman that conniving was also a micromanager. She kept telling her son, the new emperor, Nero, what to do. About 5 years of that was enough for him, and suddenly Nero's mother died. Rumors abound to this day. Many assume Nero killed his own mother, but not even in the first attempt. He tried again and again. There's several theories of how he tried. Some say Nero built a boat with a great big iron canopy roof. It was designed, as you can imagine, it was designed to easily tip over and sink both rapidly and catastrophically. So she rode in the boat. It sunk. She swam safely to shore. Another theory was that he tried to poison her, as many as 3 attempts, but each time she got the antidote fast enough and she was saved. Another historian theorized that Nero had a false ceiling built over her bed, designed to collapse on top of her, but the timing never worked out. And in the end, speculation says that he simply executed her and then called it a suicide. It is this boy, put into power by the manipulations of his mother, who then kills her off. It is that person who is emperor when Paul says there is no authority from God and those that exist have been instituted by God. Nero was the emperor in that day. There is no authority except from God, and those that exist have been instituted by God. And if you think Nero's beginning was bad, his reign was awful. He was cruel. He was unjust. Under his reign, there was a fire in Rome that was quite severe. Public pressure was mounting to find the culprit for the blaze, and because this fire had killed many people and burned lots of assets and property. Speculation began to look toward Nero himself. Rumors took hold that he was trying to clear out whole entire neighborhoods of Rome so that he could build his stadiums and his public monuments. Nero was so anxious to divert the accusations, he was hunting for a scapegoat. And you know who he found to blame the fire on in those days? Christians. It was Christians. Those Christians, we can't trust them. You know why? Because they only believe in one God. And they do weird things. They have weird practices. They drink blood and they eat flesh. Did you know that about Christians? Where's he getting that idea from? Communion, right? These Christians, we can't trust them. There's such a small segment of society and the culture in those days, and in such a superstitious world that they lived in, it was easy to blame that group. And so Nero pointed the finger at the Christians, and then they were arrested and convicted, and history suggests many Christians were killed during Nero's reign in ways that aren't suitable to speak about this morning. This Nero is the guy who's in charge when Paul says there is no authority except from God, and those that exist have been instituted by God. And Paul further says, be subject to the governing authorities. Give them the respect and the honor they are due. In my personal observation, our Western democratic culture is sorely lacking in the respect of our leaders department. We have this notion of entitlement that says, if I didn't vote for you, then I get to sit on the sidelines and mock your policies. And what's even worse is we sometimes feel permitted to mock their person too. If they stand up for themselves, we say, oh, they're a politician. They should know not to be so thin-skinned. They should have known this comes with the territory. The bottom line mantra I keep hearing about political leaders is that if they want honor and respect, and if they want my support, then they need to earn it. They need to earn my respect. They need to earn my support. Well, I hate to break it to us, but that's not quite right according to Paul. Your respect is not owed based on the competence of the leader. Your respect is required because God gave that job to them. We live in the very fortunate reality of a government system where we have the freedom to disagree with the government. We can even do so verbally. If we want, we can even go so far as to run in an election opposite them. I have Christian friends who have done just that. What Paul does not permit is complaining without being constructive. Complaining, tearing down, mocking, calling names, and all that stuff shoveled toward our leaders is a far cry from God's desire for those who call Jesus their Lord. Disrespect through objectifying politicians and reducing their personhood to some policy that you disagree with. It's not fair, and it's unbiblical. A biblical response to our leaders today would be this: complain less and pray more for those who lead us. And so this coming Saturday, I will follow through with the plan I had way back on November 17th when I first heard about it. I'm going to Del Creary Park to take in a Kim Mitchell concert, even though I only know 2 songs. And I suspect the music will be a little bit louder than I really like. I'm going to go and I'm going to set a lawn chair among a field of strangers and enjoy the evening. I'm going to be pleased that others are there for a fun time too. I'm going to bring along Lisa and Wesley and Sarah and Emily. We're all going to go together. The kids will likely cover their ears. They did that a lot last year. I think it's because the music was too loud. And we'll stay up late and we'll watch the fireworks out over the water. Perhaps hopeful that the 150th celebration will mean a little bit more of a bigger bang in the show. And Emily will likely wear her little red hat that spells Canada on the brim in little plastic diamond shape studs. And we might all have one of those little Canadian flags to wave. And we might go for an ice cream cone. I plan to celebrate the country that God has given us. And if you're so inclined to hear a couple Kim Mitchell songs and take in the fireworks, then maybe our family can meet up with your family there at the park. Who knows? Maybe we can get a whole little corner of Peterborough Free Methodist Church family people down at Del Creary, all our lawn chairs together. If you're in, throw me an email or send me a message on Facebook or something. I plan to celebrate this country that God has given us, but not before we pay respect and honor to those who lead us directly. And we're going to do that by praying for them. In a moment, after the worship team leads us in another song, we're going to pray. We're going to pray for our mayor. We're going to pray for our member of the federal government. And we're going to pray for our member of the provincial government. We'll pray for all 3. After that, we're going to sign a letter for them. A letter that says, "We prayed for you today, and keep up the good work on our behalf." And so as we prepare to respond in this way, let's have the worship team come on up. And as they do, would you stand with us as we worship?